Hi, so I want to go over a couple of the problems that were the most missed by you on quiz 12.3, and then I want to just talk a little bit about the first few lessons of module 13 about exponential growth and decay, and hopefully clear up some confusion with those. So what I've got here is the first two questions. Well, they weren't the first two questions. They were the most missed question on 12.3. So I'm going to go over how you would solve these, and hopefully this will help you on your test that's going to be coming up in a couple weeks. So this first one was about Amanda running and training. There's a couple of key things that you need to note in this problem. First of all, it's a week of training. So that means I'm going to be using seven days in a week. It tells us she runs for 200 minutes the first day, and then she's decreasing the amount of time by 30% each day. I think most of you made a mistake here by using 30% as a decimal, but what you should be using is 70% as a decimal. Whenever you're doing decay or you're doing a summation problem where it's going down, you need to think of that as 100% minus the percentage that you're doing. So if she's taking off 30% each day, that actually means that she's running 70% of what she did the day before. So this is what we need to use in our equation. So the equation that you were given for these types of problems, it's a long one. You have A times the quantity 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. So for this problem, our A value would be 200 minutes. And our rate, again, that's going to be the 70% as a decimal. So 1 minus 0.7. And our time for n is going to be 7 days. And then on the bottom, we would just have that 1 minus 0.7. Now, I'm going to type this entire thing into my calculator to solve it. You're not going to be able to see that because it's going to be backwards and it's not going to show up. But what I would type in is just a lot of parentheses. So 1 minus 0.7, and then you're going to use the caret button and 7. Put that in parentheses, divided by, again, parentheses. You can type the 0 or you don't have to. I just do that to give it a lot. Again, I don't think you guys will be able to see that because it's backwards. But when you type that in and hit enter, you get 611.7638. So looking at my answer choices, that would mean that that would round up to 612. So that's how you would solve that one. The next one, we've got Archer deciding to build model cars. This one, again, we're using that same formula that's really long that I just wrote, and you're just typing in each of these to double check to see if it works. So this one is a little different. The wording is a little different. It takes him 94% as long. That means you're going to be using 0.94. It's not 100 minus 0.94 because of the way that it's worded. It's 0.94% as long. If it was worded as it's taking him 94% less, then you would be doing that subtraction. But because it's worded this way, you just use the 0.94. So again, we would have for this first one, if it's got 16 hours, 1 minus 0.94 over 1 minus 0.94. Now the rate here is 4 cars. You're going to have to check it for each one of those. So I would plug in 4 for my time there. Now when you're doing these on the calculator, a little trick that you can use is once you type it in, and again, I don't think you can see that very well, but it does say 58.466944, so that is rounded here. So this one is true. That one works. Instead of typing all of that in again, if you have a calculator like this, If you just, once you have your answer, if you hit the up arrow, it will take you back, and I'm just gonna like use my cursor, scroll over to the 4 and change it to a 5 and hit enter. And that gives me 70.95. So that one does not work. That does not match this one. So that's just a trick you can use instead of typing in every single one over and over again. It's easy to make mistakes when you do that. So make sure you type it correctly the first time and then use your cursors. If you're using a graphing calculator, same thing. You can do that. You can also do, I think on the graphing calculator, it's like second entry, and it will retype it for you. So I'm not going to go through every single one of those, but that's just a trick you can use. Now, moving on to Module 13, growth and decay. One really important thing here, whenever you're doing growth means you have 100% of what you started with plus whatever your percentage of increase is. So when you're using that rate in your equations, you need to do 100 plus your rate. Again, this is for growth, and it's always going to be as a decimal. So 100% as a decimal would be 1, and whatever your rate is, like let's say that this is just a rate of 25%, that would be 0.25. So for that one, I would use the rate of 1.25. Again, you have 100% of what you started with plus 25% more, so 1.25. Decay, you're always going to be subtracting. So again, 100% minus your decay rate. And so again, always as a decimal. So let's say our decay rate for this one, if we do 25% again, that would be 100 minus 25 or 75 or 0.75. So it's always going to be less than decay, less than 100. So I'm just going to show you kind of looking at the rates here. If we have 4% per year and it's telling me I'm increasing and we're writing as a function, you can use that really simple a times b to the x, and b would be our rate. For this one, your rate is going to be 1.04. 4% as a decimal, 0.04 plus 100. The next example tells you you're decreasing at a rate of 15%. This, again, some of you were putting just 0.15 in for your functions. You have to do that 100% minus 15%. That means you're going to have 85% left, so 0.85 would be the rate that you would need to use in your function. So I'm just looking at the percentages for those. I'm not going to go through writing the entire function. I hope that's helpful. If you go back and look at your quizzes and the ones that you missed, this is probably where you made a mistake, either not adding it into 100 correctly or not doing that subtraction piece. Please email me if you've got any questions. Keep up the good work.